On the risks and rewards of the Real Housewives. It is time to get the ball rolling with a very revealing new look inside the businesses of the Real Housewives. Now, so far, 67 women have been cast in Bravo's many Real Housewives shows. For some, we know it can be the golden ticket to fame and fortune, right? But as we have just learned, there are incredible risks. Divorces, bankruptcies. Yu Young Lee, who's an editor for the Huffington Post, just posted incredible new revelations, and she is with us tonight here in New York. So, Yu Young, I want to get right to this because you uncovered 3 huge revelations. We're going to count them down tonight, firing it up at number 3. The risks of bankruptcy. It's pretty amazing to me. Already 12 housewives who have been cast on the show have now faced financial crisis, ultimately filing for bankruptcy. So, Yu Young, is that because they became a Real Housewives star, or is there really something bigger that was going on?
Right. I mean, it's difficult to tell. It's sort of like a chicken and an egg type question. Would they have already filed for bankruptcy had the spotlight not been on them? Or, did the added celebrity sort of make them spend more money than they typically would? I'm guessing it's more towards the latter, but what's revealing is more the actual data that we have.
Well, I want to bring in Nicole Lappin. She's the founder of Recessionista.com. Nicole, I'm curious to get your insight on this. You're with me here in New York, and we're talking 18% of housewives filing for bankruptcy. That is a large percentage. How do you explain it?
And, you don't have to be an economist to look at their income because they're going to have a pretty steady income, if any at all. And then you're going to have a big spike when the show happens. So it's kind of like the finances of a sports player. After that big spike, inevitably it's going to go down. So if you're not smart about it during that spike, which is what we're seeing a lot of from these women, you're really going to tumble down. Yeah,
and then, of course, there's a lot of spending, I imagine, going on to keep up appearances, Yu Young, wouldn't you say?
Right. I mean, Teresa Giudice is kind of a great example from the Real Housewives of New Jersey. She reportedly makes $600,000 per season, but she just recently, 2 years ago, filed for, or I guess back in a couple of years ago, filed for an $11 million bankruptcy.
Wow.
So.
Fortunately, it's not all bad for all of them. It's only 18% filing for bankruptcy. We do have a lot of women cashing in from the show, and this takes us to number 2 in our Showbiz Countdown of the risks and rewards. The numbers are just mind-blowing here. 28 housewives have launched their own businesses after appearing on these shows. So, Yu Young, back to you on this. What's going on here? Are these the smartest business women ever, or are they just the luckiest, or is it sort of a combination?
Right. I think it actually all sort of initially changed with Bethenny Frankel. She had already had her line of low-calorie drinks, Skinny Girl, and she went on the show and she really, really campaigned and got a lot of airtime and a lot of press time and sold it very successfully. So now actually what Bravo does is they actually take a small percentage of any product that is launched during the filming of the show. So, with all this extra promotion and all this airtime, a lot of housewives sitting at home and the rest of America becoming familiar with these brands, it's only natural that these housewives would have their own businesses.
Yeah, it's always surprising to me when somebody doesn't take the kind of publicity that's generated from a show like this and cash in it, or at least attempt to. That takes us to number 1 on the Showbiz Countdown of the top 3 risks and rewards of being a Real Housewife. It's divorce, with a stunning 17 castmates ending their marriages. Now, Nicole, we talk a lot about the reality show curse. What do you think is going on particular to the housewives here? Is it because they have traded privacy for publicity, essentially?
Well, it's sad. It's not only privacy and publicity, but it's fame and money over family. And that's what we've been seeing a lot of, famous for being famous, AJ. You and I have talked about this before. And there are huge risks in that. And there's also the issue of art imitating life. And I think we can agree that this doesn't necessarily qualify as art per se. We can just call it the show imitating life. When it becomes to life imitating the show, you're right. They get caught up with those appearances and then they can't sustain it.
And you just can't deny that risk of letting the cameras in and what that can do. Yu Young Lee, Nicole Lappin, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Better to get a perspective on all this than a Real Housewife herself. With me tonight, Countess Luann de Lesseps, who knows firsthand what it's like to live in that bright spotlight. The Countess is a cast member on Bravo TV's Real Housewives of New York. Always great seeing you, Luann.
Thank you, AJ. It's great to be here, as usual.
So I'm really curious to get your reaction to what we just heard. Does any of it surprise you? Is there a divorce and bankruptcy risk directly tied to being a member of the Real Housewives?
Well, it seems so, but, I think it's difficult to have a relationship, period, to be single, to be married, and especially to do it on reality television. Look, 50% of people are divorcing, which is really sad. The housewives are at about 25%, so I would say that we're batting pretty good with the statistics that we're given. So we're not doing too bad for the housewives, I would say, because, it is difficult. And when it comes to bankruptcy, I think, if you make bad decisions, you make bad choices, those are your choices. And I don't think it's something that you can blame on the Housewives franchise. I think they're personal choices, and whether it's a choice or a circumstance, this is what the problem is. I think if you're spending over your means,
right,
it's never a good idea.
Yeah, and we know that definitely goes on. But you make a good point. You have, on the one hand, it is a blessing for so many people who appear in this franchise, and it's a curse for others.
Yeah, it's been great for me in so many ways. I divorced during the course of the show. I never talked about my divorce on the show because I was not comfortable with that.
Right.
It was in the press, but it was never something that I wanted to share on the show because I wanted to protect my children. I've written a book on the show about manners and etiquette, and now I'm going to be on QVC doing a tableware collection. So it's been a wonderful experience for me. It has its ups and downs, that is for sure. But you have to really know how to handle it.
And I've always felt that people should follow your lead as far as protecting the children in particular. But speaking of successes, Real Housewives of Atlanta star Nene Leakes is obviously a huge measure of success that can be had from the show. And she hinted at her business success from the show. I want to watch that.
What you don't understand is, while you were running your mouth with him, I was running to the bank, sweetie, and depositing a Trump check.
A Trump check. Okay. So Leakes, again, a great example of how to make the housewives work for you with her stint on Celebrity Apprentice. Now she's on a primetime sitcom. Do the housewives, as far as you have seen, a lot of them go into this hoping it will change their lives, only to be blindsided sometimes by what actually happens?
Absolutely. I think that it can be a very good experience, depending on what shape you're really in, I think. It's all up to you and how smart you are about it and where you want to take it. And I think if you get organized and you're really passionate about something and you could absolutely make the show a great success for yourself. There's so many great examples, Bethany and Nene and a lot of the housewives, the Beverly Hills housewives are doing great things. There are great things to be done on the show, and it doesn't have to be a negative experience. And again, it's about going into the show with kind of a plan and kind of goals, and trying to get to those goals and hope for the best, because life brings on challenges.
Yeah,
it always does, and that's a part of life, and that's why the people watch the Housewives, because we're real people. We have problems. We have problems in business. We have problems with our family, and that's one of the reasons why people enjoy the show, because it is a real part of our lives, and the good days and the bad days.
So if I were to take you back to day one, pretty much a yes or no here, would you do it again if you were asked to do it again?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Turned out to be a good thing for you.
Yeah,
and I think you've always had a really healthy attitude about it, and it's always great to see you, Countess.
Thank you so much, AJ. And again, it's been a great experience, and it's all about having a healthy attitude.
All right, Countess Luann de Lesseps, thank you.